So 2022 just wrapped up and it was another slow year for games. Despite these setbacks, I'd like to take some time and highlight the games that made an impact on me. I don't personally like doing number lists since I feel the only real standout number is number 1 and the rest are just great suggestions. So let's take that approach. A list of games I had fun with and then my best game of the year. Let's get started.
Okay.
This game came at a perfect time. We were all waiting for Elden Ring to come out when out of nowhere, this gem just kicked its way to the top. It's a beautiful evolution to the beat 'em up genre while retaining the core principles which makes the genre fun. You beat things up. Every hit carries weight, dodging or parrying feels satisfying, and it has plenty of set pieces that are ripped straight from movies. It doesn't overstay its welcome and drag on, so it feels complete by the time you finish it. The story is a simple revenge plot. And that's all you really need to start hitting stuff. There is an aging mechanic for every time you die, but I'll be honest, I completely avoided this. This game just compelled me, dared me even to beat it without any death. It's the kind of game that you enjoy because of the challenge, and the rage you feel throughout the journey is just a seasoning to a delicious plate of victory. I love when games like this come out and the news cycle becomes dominated by the same old headlines. Should there be an easy mode? Why isn't it accessible? Etc, etc, etc. I love it less when the devs ultimately cave in, so thankfully I played it before all those changes. I still maintain that if a game is too hard for me, then that's on me. I'm not preaching some elite gamer stuff either. There have been games that I've given up just due to the challenge. I'm looking at you early NES days, and that's okay. Failing is temporary, and if you want to succeed, well, in the words of Sifu, get good.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
There you are, wondering what game to play today. You hover over this cursed game, debating all your life choices, and decide, no, not today. Today I make a stand and play something on my backlog. And that's exactly what I did and finally played Parasite Eve. There is a strong nostalgia for old PS1 games these days, with all sorts of demake demos of modern games that I figure I might as well play an actual game from that time period. What I found was a very unique RPG with a strong sense of identity. I would be remiss to say that this was just some Resident Evil clone, because while you think it presents itself as some kind of horror game, I feel the tone hardly lends itself to that. Sure, there are corpses and monsters and biological horrors, but it doesn't feel like the game is trying to play up these horror tropes. The battle theme is this cool laid-back song, something you play cruising down the street rather than in a fight for your life. A lot of it can be part of a lo-fi compilation video and I just can't get enough of it. It works so well against the setting of New York. Now I know using a major city such as New York is overplayed to death, but this is where the PS1 era comes in clutch. Since it can't be a one-to-one portrayal of the city, it takes some stylistic liberties. As a native New Yorker, it's so fun seeing the vibe of the city captured rather than trying to get everything in detail. This is why I feel demaking modern games to this style is so compelling, because the technical limitation requires a creative interpretation. When you can just render anything you want, your imagination simply works less. I can admit though that for many, the tone may feel too inconsistent, or even jarring, but to me, someone who was alive during this period, it all feels very consistent in a very PS1 way. Games of this era always felt experimental, a little weird, if not flat out uncomfortable. Which is a great transition to the gameplay because this is where the age really starts to show. Menu interfacing is way clunky, and navigating the world will require you to press the action button on everything. You better hope you get it at the right angle too, because you can easily mistake something you can interact with solely because you didn't click action from the right spot. The combat introduces great ideas such as movement within a turn-based system, and for someone like me who doesn't enjoy how static these mechanics feel, it's a godsend. Add a very interesting approach to equipment and you have a very unique time, more so than anything you'll find today. Save yourself from the numbing torture of games to just spend time and enjoy something different.
Whoa!
This wouldn't be one of my videos if there weren't any hot takes. Yes, the Game Awards crowned it the best game of the year, and yes, many of you feel the same way, but obviously since it's here, it means it's not my game of the year. Let it be clear though, just because it wasn't my game of the year, that does not mean it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It just did less for me than I guess for many of you, and that's okay. The main takeaway is that I feel that it's the worst of the Soulsborne games, and for all the reasons it was praised with to begin with. Just stop typing. We aren't going to agree. See, everyone praised it for being the culmination of all the lessons learned throughout the many games, and while I believe that's true, I feel something was lost in the process. There's a certain cohesiveness, a certain intentionality that feels missing in this entry. All the tools available to me never made me feel alone. The open world gave me a sense of always having space rather than the bleak oppression of the many other games. I never had that sense of accomplishment that creating a shortcut in Dark Souls ever did. It could be an overexposure to the series, or perhaps with time, I will appreciate it for what it is. But criticism aside, it was still an enjoyable time exploring everything the game had to offer. Deleting something with the big anime beam was so satisfying every time I was able to set it up correctly. People cried about easy mode weeks after crying because of Sifu, so that was a wonderful time. This boss was amazing to fight. What else can I really say about this game that hasn't been said a million times over? It may not be my game of the year, but it damn well could be yours, and you'd be right. Let me tell you a tale. I am 9 years old and I'm about to get a brand new Game Boy game. My mom thinks I'm going to be looking through all my choices, but I know what I want. I walk on over, pick up Pokemon Yellow, and excitedly slap that bad boy into my Game Boy. And then this happens.
Eastern Reborn is awesome.
I quit the game and vowed to never play those games ever again. So this year, when I heard the news of a new entry, all the new changes, all the things that might finally get me into the series, I was so excited. Maybe finally I would see what everyone saw. So I ignored it all and played Pokemon Crystal. What, you think I'd play this buggy thing? On my 3DS, this game looks beautiful, and those animations. So much changes with just a few more frames. Add that it's in the old style and it feels perfect. It is still from a generation of Pokemon that I remember, so I know what I'm looking at, and now that I'm older and can use Google, I can use the appropriate type of attacks. I don't do much portable gaming post 2020, but whenever I have, this is the perfect game to jump into. From what I hear, the newer entries have very complex world-ending storylines, but this one is nice and simple. I know there are many of you that have never liked these games, so give this one a try. I find it to be the best one. Ash took 25 years to finally be a Pokemon master, so maybe our time is finally here too. And it sure beats playing this thing over here.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Oh yeah, that's right. This wasn't my favorite game of the year either. I'm sure many of you expected it since I mentioned Elden Ring before, because it's another damn good game. If the ambitious scope of Elden Ring center around its gameplay mechanics, here I feel the ambitious scope is centered around story. More importantly, characters rather than the actual narrative. When the story is going, damn is it going. The intro to this game is a masterclass on how to kick off a game. It had been a while since I played the last one, and 2 seconds in and I knew exactly what I was here for. It sets the location, stakes, antagonists, motivations, conflict all seamlessly while letting me get to the action we all want and expect. The voice acting, my lord, it's enough to make me reconsider what I've said about these cinematic games, but honestly, I just feel Santa Monica Studios is in a whole other league. It is so hard seeing the father-son relationship and not wanting to get adopted on the spot. This has to be the most amazing display of character growth in the form of Kratos throughout an incredible series. This is what a reboot wants and wishes it could ever be. So why is it not my favorite game? Because when the story isn't moving forward, God does it feel padded. There are segments that feel deliberately stretched out for the sake of runtime, and it cuts into the pacing of the story. I never understood the complaint that a game is too short if the experience is perfect from start to finish. More time means more time to mess it up, and this is what I feel is the number one failure of this game for me. It could have been refined and honed just a little more. Still, this is an amazing gem, and a diamond in the rough is still a diamond, so please go ahead and play this. Now it's time for the best game of the year. We had some great entries, but this one stood above the rest. It was my number one most played game of the year, and that was Yeah, that's right. I'm not kidding, and this isn't a meme. This should have won all the awards at the Game Awards. Game of the Year, Best Indie, Best Fighting Game, since clearly we don't know what a fighting game is. Now, in a year where we got Elden Ring and God of War, how could this be the best game of the year? Well, let me explain with the story. I once had a friend who took some advanced classes in high school, and because they were so advanced and hard, their grades were not perfect, even if they were the highest ones for those classes. Contrast this with a classmate who solely took the easy required classes and therefore had perfect scores. Graduation rolls around, and who do you think was a valedictorian? That's right, the classmate. And why? Because life is not fair and cares very little about ambition, just execution. This right here is a pure game. The gameplay loop is like shooting straight dopamine, and I just couldn't get enough. Every update and addition was like a little Christmas, and it was just so easy to jump into a game. It was the feeling of an arcade game with the accessibility of a flash game. It just feels like it came from a different period with a different ideology. Let's just crank up the fun to 11. Less is more, they say, and I feel this game embodies that phrase. You ain't gonna find crazy open worlds, deep narrative, cinematic cutscenes, deep complex combat systems, but you also avoid all the potential pitfalls that those things bring. This is just fun, and I dare you to play this and not get hooked. Ambitious AAA games should continue to exist, and let's be honest, the industry will suck them off plenty, so they're not at a loss for not topping my silly little list. But sometimes something comes around that executes so well that it needs a spotlight to remind us where it all started.